The belief that Jesus' mother Mary was a virgin has a fascinating linguistic origin. I'm Elon Gilad. I write about Hebrew and Jewish history. Let me explain.
Shalom Elon, me again. Class is in session, so let's get started.
Believes is a prophecy from the book of Isaiah. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. But here's the fascinating part. The original Hebrew text doesn't actually mention a virgin at all. The Hebrew word used is Alma, which simply means young woman. The Hebrew word for virgin is actually Betulah.
So it's commonly stated that the word Betulah means virgin. And for the generic meaning, it does mean virgin. But there are some incidences where it doesn't mean virgin. Now, the one thing that I want everyone to focus on is the question, is the word virgin the only connotation that the book of Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 and Matthew is picking up on? Is that the only connotation? Or is there a better word that has inside of its meaning also virginity as well as some other things? Thus why the author of Isaiah chapter 7, being Isaiah, chose the word Alma, and my answer is yes. Alma is a much better word for what the author is trying to say and what Matthew is pointing you back to. So if you've been a follower of mine for any substantial amount of time, you know that I have dove into this head on. And my perspective is a little different than what you're going to find in the mainstream Christian church. And the reason why this is because I'm a Messianic. I'm going to pull a lot from the Torah and I'm going to demonstrate how Isaiah chapter 7 is displaying the word Alma, because that gives over 5 connotations that the word Betulah does not. So Betulah explicitly just says virgin, right? It doesn't display her age or anything about whether she's righteous or not, whereas the word Alma does. And you can see this in the root of the word. In the root of the word, it explicitly means something that has been hidden, something that has been kept away. And the status of a woman as a virgin is something that would be very much protected in ancient Israel. Now, one of the connotations is that she's a woman, Alma, not Elim. And by the way, I have a video on Elim showing that the 2 times that the word is used in the Hebrew Bible also displays virginity. Please feel free to check that out. Right here is the thumbnail. Now, so Alma means that she's a woman, okay? Means that she's never been married, i.e. that she's a young maiden. It means that she's never had children, okay? And it means that she's righteous and she conceals herself. That's the 5 connotations of the word Alma. Wrapped up into that word, that is the 5 connotations. So why did the author choose Alma and not Betulah? Because in the word Alma, you have everything that you need to recognize Jesus' mother. She's young, she's concealed, she's righteous, she's a temple virgin, so on and so forth. There are many things that the word Alma brings to your mind that the word Betulah doesn't, and that's important. So what's happening in Isaiah chapter 7? Isaiah chapter 7 is a beautiful chapter which God is basically saying that no matter the war and no matter what's going to happen, i.e. you, Judah, and Israel, both pack your bags because you're going into exile. See the later portion of the chapter, somewhere around verse 17 or 18. The Lord will not have his plan thwarted. What is that plan? The plan of Genesis 49:10, that he would bring the Messiah through the line of Judah. Now, how do we know that this is the issue, right? Well, see verse 6, where it explicitly tells you what the fear that they have, that someone else, i.e. from the tribes of the northern tribes, right? That they're going to come in and seat the son of David and make them king over them. Well, that would thwart the promise of Genesis 49:10, which both Jews and Christian agree is about the Messiah. So unless Elon is now going to segue out of Genesis 49:10 and say, no, this is not what the vast majority of Jews believe, then it's the vast majority of Jews believe that Genesis 49:10 is, and Christians agree, is about the future Messiah to come. So the promise is that the Lord, even unto the time when the Messiah would come, which is 700 years of a prophecy that Isaiah is prophesying, even through all the exiles, the Lord is still with you Emmanuel, the Lord is still with you, that he would bring forth his promise and that it will not be thwarted, that he will not allow anyone to sit on the throne and thwart the promise of bringing the Messiah through the lineage. That's what the chapter is about, and that's what Matthew is picking up on. Matthew is able to read this chapter and see, here is the promise in verse 14, in light of the civil war that's happening, in light of the fear that they have in verse 6. Then you go into the other chapters where you can clearly see that verse 8 tells you of chapter 7 that it would take 65 years for them to be carried away into exile. Well, that was fulfilled, and you can find that in 2 Kings 15, 16, 17, and 18, where King Hezekiah is dealing with the problem that started with his father Ahaz, whom the Lord is speaking to through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 7. So, with that being stated, let me show you a few portions that I think are relevant that you should go and watch to get a more in-depth view of what I just explained. But wait, Courtney, what about the Proverbs use? Well, I've addressed that as well. And I've also addressed the fact that Jerome said, let them, i.e. the Jews, at least show me where the word Alma is applied to married women as well, and I will confess my ignorance. So the point is if the word Alma can be applied to married women as they're presupposing is the adulterous woman of Proverbs mentioned, then my question is, how is it a young woman of marriageable age when we know that after a woman gets married, she's no longer called Alma, she's called Isha? So let's address this. That she's married and already had kids, okay? So if a woman is married, already had kids, then goes out on her husband, she would be called an adulterous woman. But see, the issue is... But see, she would not be called Alma. Thus why a woman isn't called Alma after marriage or after kids. But she's just known as Isha after that. So it's impossible that the adulterous woman, adultery equals she's married, the adulterous woman could be the Alma, since an Alma has never been married. It's never used. This word Alma is never used of a married woman. And if you say, well, what about the Proverbs use? You cannot use the Proverbs use to substantiate the Proverbs use. You have to go to elsewhere in the Bible. And the word Alma, in singular and plural, alamot, is only used 7 times in the Hebrew Bible, and all 7 times it's used of a woman who is a virgin. Since we can't find an example of Alma or alamot being used of a woman who is promiscuous, then we can't rightly assume that verse 20 should be brought up to verse 19. This would be the first case of that, and with that being the first case, you can't then use that to support the Isaiah 7 argument that you're trying to use it to support. You would have to find another passage as your supporting passage, which again, it doesn't exist. So you're going to be hard-pressed to find another person that has so deeply covered the subject of the virgin birth. It has been basically the reason that I breathe air, because I believe fundamentally the Hebrew Bible is projecting for you to know that your Messiah would be born of a virgin. It's one of the ways that you would identify him. So until next time, shalom.